There was a time in this country when Sunday had a smell. It started in the morning, sometime around 10 o'clock, when whatever was going into the oven was put in. By noon, the whole house carried it, roasting meat or something braising low and slow, or bread that had been rising since the night before. By the time the family sat down, usually mid-afternoon, the smell had been building for hours. It was not an accident, it was a preparation. Sunday supper was the meal that the week was organized around, the meal that said whatever else this family is or is not, we sit down together at this table and we eat what someone spent the morning making, and we do not rush. Today, we're counting down 10 Sunday supper recipes that have quietly disappeared from the American table, dishes that defined the ritual of the family meal for generations and that almost no one makes anymore. But this story is not simply about nostalgia for old food. It is about something deeper than that, about what Sunday supper actually was, what it held together, and what we lost when the ritual unraveled. By the time we reach number 1, you may find yourself thinking less about the food and more about the table it was made for. Number 10. Ham and bean soup with cornbread. This was never just a soup, it was an entire system, a way of making one thing last across several days while feeding a large family with almost no waste. A leftover ham bone, stripped of most of its meat, but still rich with marrow and flavor, went into a heavy pot with dried white beans that had been soaked overnight, diced onion, celery, a bay leaf, and enough water to cover everything generously. The pot went on the stove Sunday morning on the lowest flame and stayed there for most of the day, the beans gradually softening, the broth thickening and deepening with the flavor of the bone, the small pieces of ham that fell away from it enriching every spoonful. The cornbread came out of the oven an hour before supper, a cast-iron skillet of it, golden on top, slightly crisp at the edges, crumbly and slightly sweet, and was eaten alongside the soup, dunked into the broth or crumbled directly into the bowl by whoever preferred it that way. This meal cost almost nothing to make. It fed 8 people, it made the house smell like a home all day, and it used what was already there, completely and without waste. Number 9. Chicken.
Number 8. Pot roast with brown gravy. The Sunday pot roast occupied its own category in the architecture of American domestic life, not merely a meal, but a commitment. A large chuck roast, usually 3 to 4 pounds, was browned on all sides in a heavy Dutch oven until a deep, dark crust formed that sealed in the juices and left behind a fond of caramelized meat drippings that would become the foundation of the gravy. Onions and garlic went in next, then a cup of beef broth, and the lid went on, and the oven went to 325 degrees, and then the waiting began. 3 hours, sometimes 4, with no interference required beyond the occasional turning. What emerged from that process was not simply cooked beef, it was something transformed. The tough, fibrous connective tissue of the chuck having dissolved into gelatin, the meat yielding to pressure so gently that a spoon could cut it, the braising liquid reduced to a gravy of profound depth that was spooned over everything on the plate. The pot roast said, "I started this at 9 o'clock this morning because you are worth 4 hours of this oven." Number 7.
Number 6. Stuffed cabbage rolls. This is a dish that arrived in the American Sunday table through the kitchens of Central and Eastern European immigrant families, Polish, Hungarian, Czech, Ukrainian, and became so thoroughly embedded in the cooking of the Midwest and the industrial Northeast that many families who made it had no clear memory of where it had come from. The preparation was labor-intensive in a way that belonged entirely to a Sunday when nothing else was pressing. Large outer leaves of cabbage, softened in boiling water until pliable, filled with a mixture of seasoned ground beef, cooked rice, onion, and egg,
rolled tight and nestled close together in a heavy roasting pan, covered with a tomato sauce that was sweet and slightly acidic, and reduced during the long oven time into something thick and rich that penetrated every roll and filled the kitchen with a smell that was warm and complex and entirely specific to this dish. Stuffed cabbage rolls improved overnight. They were always somehow better on Monday than they had been on Sunday, which meant that making them was an act of generosity not just for the family at the table, but for the family that the week ahead would require. Number 5, baked nuts and produced in the hands of someone who had practiced enough, something that bore no relation to anything pre-made. The bottom crust in particular was critical. It had to be sturdy enough to hold the filling, but tender enough to yield to a spoon, a balance that required both the right fat ratio and the right oven temperature. It was the kind of dish that a cook spent years learning to make well, which is exactly the kind of dish that a culture in a hurry stops making first. Number 3, Sunday fried chicken. Fried chicken existed in American cooking long before the 1930s, but the Sunday fried chicken of the mid-20th century was a specific thing. Not fast food, not restaurant food, but the production of a specific woman in a specific kitchen who had been frying chicken every Sunday for 20 or 30 years and whose version was, by general family consensus, the standard against which all other fried chicken was measured. The process was unhurried. A whole chicken cut into pieces and soaked in buttermilk overnight, dredged in seasoned flour, salt, pepper, garlic powder, paprika, and whatever else the cook had decided over decades belonged in the coating, and fried in a cast iron skillet in an inch of hot lard or shortening in batches, each piece turned once, never rushed, the temperature managed by feel and by sound. The crust that resulted was thick and shatteringly crisp. The meat inside was moist to the bone. The skill involved was real, accumulated over years, and it could not be replicated by following a recipe. It lived in the hands. When that generation left the kitchen, much of it left with them.
Number 2, Sunday cake. The Sunday cake, the cake that appeared at the end of the family meal, carried to the table on a pedestal stand, its layers visible at the cut edge, was a different object from the cakes available in any bakery or grocery store. It was made at home, usually on Saturday afternoon, so that it could be frosted and left to settle overnight, from a recipe that had been in the family for long enough that the card was barely legible. The layers were baked in round pans, cooled completely before handling, and assembled with a filling that might be jam or lemon curd or a cooked frosting of sugar and egg white beaten over heat until it became smooth and glossy and spread across the layers like silk. The exterior frosting went on last, applied with a knife in swoops and peaks that were the signature of the maker. Every woman's cake looked slightly different, and those differences were recognized and remembered by everyone at the table.
Number 1, the full Sunday roast. Everything on the table at once. At the top of this list, above every individual dish, above every recipe that can be named and written down, sits the Sunday supper as a complete and unified event. Everything on the table at once, made by one person over the course of a morning, served to everyone in the family at the same time. The roast at the center, the gravy in a boat, the vegetables in their dishes, roasted potatoes, braised greens, creamed corn, whatever the season had given, the bread in a basket, the butter on a plate, the table set the way it was always set, with the same dishes that had been used every Sunday for as long as anyone could remember. This is not a recipe. It cannot be reduced to a list of ingredients and instructions. It was a practice, a weekly recurring act of gathering that said, this family has a center, and the center is here, at this table, at this hour, on this day.